Hi, welcome to The Child's View. I'm Bernadette Towns, and these are my colleagues, Becky Roth and Sharon Brown. And today we want to talk a little bit about the benefits of nursing. There's pros and cons, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I did want to start out with, because I had someone ask me, a young parent, she said, will my child get fat if I nurse? And the answer is no. Okay, so the child is more likely to overeat if they are actually having formula than if they're nursing. So there's benefits to the woman's body as well as to the infant.
Exactly.
And I know you two, we all teach on this, so I'll let them join in and share some things. But to the woman's body, you need to know that when you are pregnant, your body's actually putting away fat for this mother's milk. So as you nurse, you're actually taking that fat that was stored for this and you're getting rid of it. So it helps you lose weight. So that's one of the benefits I think a lot of my students really need to understand. Your body made provision for this nursing, so you should get rid of that milk. It helps.
Yep, and you can also feel your uterus contract.
Yes.
Yes, so it helps with that, and so the uterus shrinks quickly, more quickly. So you get rid of some of that kind of squishy feeling, baby fat, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's uterus. And when you're nursing, I remember the first time I did it, I was like, ooh, my belly does kind of hurt. Or my
Yes,
uterus,
it does. It does because it's pulling it back.
Yes, it's contracting, and it's supposed to do that.
Yes, it is, and you want that. And with each child, now I nursed all 5 of my children, so with each child, it does get a little bit more painful with the contracting because it is pulling it back a little bit more because everything, it gets loose. I don't know if you notice with each baby, you're like the first time you barely show, and then the next time you're showing before you find out you're pregnant. And
your body's like, I got this.
It's all loose, and so it does have to pull those parts back in, and so it does hurt a little bit more. I'm not going to say it's a completely painless experience. You were sharing how it is a little bit painful to nurse. That might be one of the drawbacks.
That's a drawback. Let's talk about the benefits to the child first.
Yes.
About giving the necessary colostrum to the child that helps the immune system.
Yes.
All of those types of antibodies that we're giving them from us that will help them be healthier babies.
Yeah.
Yep, reduce incidence of ear infection,
Yes.
illness,
Less allergies.
Less allergies.
And for the mom, it reduces the risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, high blood pressure. So it helps the mom with all of that. And then with the baby, less ear infections, boosts their immunity, helps to build strong bonds. Something that's beautiful about mother's milk is it's always the right temperature. Yep. You never have to worry about it being too hot.
Never overheated.
Which
I never learned that. It just didn't. It didn't
work
feel for me. Yeah, I had to be really careful about heating my bottles when the baby stopped nursing and we got him onto formula. But that was really a hard thing for me. So when you're nursing, you don't have to judge that. You don't have to worry about it. So if you're kind of
and it's convenient.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do it anywhere. Although there's some people say there's some cons with that, like that aren't comfortable out in public. I just had a towel. I often went to the bathroom and sat, in the lounge or whatever.
Well, I had one of those fandangle things, and I could just nurse right there in the middle of the mall. Nobody would know I was nursing, and I just, baby's in there, and the whole thing's completely covered.
So, I'm glad that you guys have brought that up because I was a real modest person, and I had a really difficult time if anyone was in my house besides my family or out. It was really hard for me, which then in turn puts stress on the baby. If you're not comfortable with it, then the baby
your milk doesn't come down as easily if you're stressed.
And so then the baby is stressed, you're stressed, the baby's stressed, and that's never a good entity.
But fortunately, hospitals often have lactation consultants, or you can get online and look up lactation consultants. They're very helpful. What's the group?
La Leche League.
They're wonderful.
They have lactation coaches, and that helps. I just was really modest, so it was really hard for me. But I knew that first initial 6 weeks was vital.
Well, and they can help you pump, right?
Yes.
So
and then dad can help if you
dad
pump.
can help.
Dad can help. So we're not saying that nursing's the only way. If you feel like you have to use formula, that's okay.
Right.
If you don't get enough milk, sometimes milk is incompatible with babies. Sometimes they are allergic to it. It's rare, but it does happen. And so if you do have to use formula, there's no shame in that as well. Correct. But we're just talking today about the benefits of actual nursing. So a lot of parents are worried about how do I know they're getting enough ounces, because with a bottle, you say, oh, they drank 4 ounces.
Right.
But one of the ways I tell my students is if they're eating every 2 to 3 hours, if they are acting satisfied after they nurse, and then 6 wet diapers a day. If they're having at least 6 wet diapers, they don't necessarily have to have poopy diapers, because the beauty of mother's milk is that it digests into the body.
Easily.
And so because it digests so well, there's not always poopy.
Right.
But 6 wet diapers lets you know that they're getting enough milk.
Right. Well, I think having the child be satisfied. If he's not getting enough, he's not, or she's not going to be satisfied, and they're going to want you to nurse more and more and more.
Yes.
So if after you've nursed, they seem satisfied, they go to sleep, they seem happy.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
The other aspect of that is, though, moms, you got to watch what you're eating.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Good
Because
point.
what you eat goes right to them.
And if you struggle with maybe substance abuse, you have moms that are struggling with certain addictions, you don't want to nurse, right? You definitely need to make other choices. So there's some things to consider.
And check with your doctor if you're on medication, because there are some medications that you don't want to nurse when you're on that medication. So.
Right.
After I had my son, first baby, of course, and again, I had my degree, but it's a whole different ballgame when it's your baby. And it was my birthday, and I remember my doctor saying, be cautious about chocolate or anything you didn't really eat while you were pregnant. So I had chocolate for my birthday this one night. We went to dinner. It was the first time we'd left him with my mom. And the next day I nursed. Oh my gosh, he threw up and threw up and threw up. I called the ambulance. I did everything I knew for my health and safety. But after a while you're like, I'm done. I'm new mom, I'm calling the ambulance. So by the time they got there, he was done. And they checked him and they said, Becky, we want you to go to your pediatrician just in case. They were really nice. And so I went to my pediatrician, and first thing he said when I walked in the room was, did you eat chocolate? Why would you ask me that? And he said, well, babies' tummies are really sensitive, and I know we had that conversation, but so be prepared that there's some things.
Sacrifice. You might have to sacrifice, but you know what? Even broccoli causes
yes.
And
cabbage,
so even some vegetables you have to be aware of, and so it's a small sacrifice, but you think, I'm taking care of myself for my baby.
Another benefit is, again, that skin to skin contact, and it's really important to build that very strong bond attachment for those children to be able to continue to
eyes. The theory of the fact that babies can see best 12 inches away is because that's the distance from your breast to your eyes.
That's correct.
Exactly.
That's correct.
And we were talking about in another segment how we get all wrapped up in getting chores done. That was my favorite time of day. I had to sit, get in that rocking chair, and nurse my baby. I had to stop everything.
Yep.
Right.
And it forces you to stop it, which brings me to a small pet peeve. Let's just want to sidetrack. If you do bottle feed, don't prop up the bottle.
Oh, no.
The propping up the bottle is no good.
It defeats the whole purpose.
It does.
Right.
It takes away those moments that you can have for attachment.
Right. You can still develop the attachment, do all those other wonderful things if you can't breastfeed.
Right.
But put the baby in your arms when you're feeding. Look at them in the eyes. Make contact.
Not to take away from breastfeeding, but bottle feeding then also allows dad to participate in that bonding.
Grandma.
And it could be pumped milk. I mean, it could be breast milk that's pumped. But let's not forget that.
Yeah.
And then it's probably another segment. Sorry, about having to put your baby in care when they're still breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And what we need to do there.
Right.
That could be another segment, though.
Yeah.
But
to look for.
Again, the importance of breastfeeding.
Yeah, and the other thing is that yes, breast milk is good, but if you're gonna buy it, I would say don't get it from anyone you don't know. Because I hear a lot of the students say that there's breast milk for sale on the market and things like that.
It used to be called a wet nurse, but I actually nursed off another woman. My mom's best friend was my wet nurse.
Really?
Because she had trouble breastfeeding, and she wanted me to have breast milk. And so her and her best friend had babies at the same time. I know. I forget, and then she tells me, and I'm like, "What? Did we do that?" But yeah, you reminded me.
Yeah. So having the bottle, sometimes, if you are, like I said, be careful. Be careful with using other people's breast milk. That's basically.
And
the lesson
formula
there.
companies have gotten very competitive, right? They have different levels of iron and
Right.
nutrients. You talk to your doctor, you choose it together.
Right.
So yeah, I
There's
would
lots of
definitely,
good
if you're not
formula
using
out
your
there.
own or somebody you know, use formula.
Yeah, so in recap, breast milk breastfeeding is not the only way, but there are lots and lots of benefits, and we do promote breastfeeding because of all the benefits to mom and the baby. Thank you for watching The Child's View, and we will see you next time.